Welcome to the Extraordinary Executives Podcast, where business owners like you share their experiences, insight, and lessons learned. So grab your cup of coffee or tea and get ready for an engaging conversation. Here's your host, Randy Jones.
Welcome to another episode of the Extraordinary Executives Podcast Show. Today, we have a really good friend of mine, a brilliant businessman. He is the co-founder of Sanametrix Incorporated. He has a mind for business, a passion for people, loves what he does, but most importantly, is an extraordinary executive. Welcome today, our guest, Warner Roberts. Welcome, Warner.
How's it going, Randy? Appreciate that encouraging introduction.
Well, hey, I do my best. Hey, we'll get right into it because I know a lot of people want to hear your story. And I often start off with the same question. So tell me about Sanametrix, or better yet, why did you guys start this company?
So to tell you about Sanametrix first, and I'll dive into why I started. So Sanametrix is a government contractor. We've been doing business with the government, federal government specifically, since 2000. And we started off as a software development company. Since that time period, we really expanded our expertise and our services to program management, data analysis and analytics. And we've also done infrastructure services as well, and some research work too. So we have, a pretty wide array of IT specific expertise and some research expertise. And we've been doing a really good job with, a lot of in the civilian space with the Department of Education and some other civilian agencies. So our real claim to fame is data collection systems. We understand data. We understand how to collect the data, how to analyze the data, and how to then create reports and to visualize the data to inform our customers so they can make informed decisions on what to do with next steps in the program. So that's just in a nutshell, that's really what Sanametrix does and our claim to fame. Our biggest customer is the Department of Education. We started there many years ago. It continues to be one of our biggest customers. Have a lot of expertise specifically with them, but we've done, like I said, work with other civilian agencies too. So why I started is I was tired of working for somebody else. I was tired of working for other companies that were, getting the benefit of those, large bill rates. And because I was in program management, and I was like, what? Why am I doing this as opposed to doing it for myself? And so luckily, I was fortunate. When I was working at the Department of Education, I met my business partner, Joseph Collins. He already had started Sanametrix, and he said, "Hey, Warner, why don't you, join forces with me?" And I was like, "No, not really interested. I'm just going to kind of see. I've kind of thought about doing it on my own. Being an entrepreneur is something I've always wanted to do." So a year passed, and he asked me again, and it was just good timing. We had other opportunities that were slated for us. So I joined forces with him, and at the time, there were Sanametrix was about 5 employees. Now we're up to 65, some 13 years later, and we're looking to grow and develop. But anyway, that's in a nutshell, that's the story, how I got started. And my business partner and I have been growing Sanametrix ever since I started back in 2009.
Outstanding. So I guess what's your role, in the company? Are you in the day-to-day? Are you out on the front? Are you doing a little bit of both? What do you do?
That's a great question. Yeah. So when we first started back in 2009, I was out in front, right? So we started, and I actually moved from the Department of Education because one of my former clients that I worked with through a different company asked me to come back and be a program manager. So I went back to HUD, Office of the Inspector General, one of my former clients. And so that's how I got started with Sanametrix. I left the Department of Ed where my business partner was, went to HUD, and I was billable. And so I always tell business owners, hey, people say, hey, I want to get started. I want to jump right in. I'm like, look, before you jump in the government contract, and make sure you have billable work, and you might have to work as a billable employee until you get some momentum, get some other people on the contract or some other things. And then you can focus on building out your business by bringing other folks on, so you can then push yourself out of being billable work, and you can actually focus on being a business owner and growing your business. So that's kind of got started with me. Went back to HUD, and started growing out the business that way. Started adding additional employees onto the company. And then we started just slowly trickling in additional work, and we expanded into the point where I wasn't billable anymore. And I could start doing some real, CEO, which I am now, Chief Executive Officer for Sanametrix. And so again, a lot of people say, well, I just want to jump in, ease into it. You don't have to necessarily have all your ducks in the row, right up front. If you want to be an entrepreneur, start easy. Make sure that you don't put additional pressure that you don't need to on yourself. And so now I'm a Chief Executive Officer and President of Sanametrix, and I look at the strategic growth and try to manage the strategic growth of the company. And we've grown to the point where we have people that look at the day-to-day stuff, and myself and my business partner really focused on strategic growth and really positioning us for future success.
So what do you feel has been the biggest contribution to your success today? Because running a company can be challenging on all aspects. What do you think contributes to what you guys do and being able to do it the best, the way that you do?
Great question. So we've been very fortunate. Like I said, we've had a long-standing customer, which helped us to grow and expand our service offerings. And it really honestly came from one major project. We had it a IDIQ, indefinite quantity, indefinite delivery, or indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, opportunity at Department of Education. And we just utilized that particular opportunity to really expand our business and our service offerings. So we were fortunate to find, an opportunity like that. But, beyond that, finding the right people. I'm sure, most of your listeners have read this book, Good to Great, by Joseph Collins, or James Collins, I should say. That book is fantastic because it talks about getting the right people on the bus. If you have the right people on the bus, it helps to position you so that you can focus as a business owner on strategic growth. Also, you don't have to necessarily worry about the day-to-day operations at some point in time. But the right people on the bus is critical for any business growth. If you have the wrong people on the bus, they don't appreciate the vision, they don't adopt the vision, it's very difficult to progress as a business. So that's one of the key things I talk about. Hire smart. If you can hire somebody that can do one or two positions or roles within the company, that's kind of the folks you want. Somebody that's going to be driven, focused, and believes in the vision of the company, because they're going to be the ones that really help you to catapult you to the next level. And so that's a key part that helps me, to focus on other things that I need to as an executive.
I think that's interesting. You reference Good to Great because, as you hire in the right people, a lot of times people come into your organization and they sort of want to bring their own ideas and then before they adopt the initial ideas. And I often would hear business owners refer to from that book, freedom within the framework, Here's how we do it. But, if we stir the batter to make the cake, where you can use a blender, you can use a wooden spoon or so-and-so, but this is what we do. We stir the batter. I think it's interesting that you said having the right people on the bus has made all the difference of where you guys are going. So as you've grown the company, you and your partner, every business owner knows that they can't be successful by themselves. What has been essential, or who are the essential team members that you've over the years realized, hey, we should have had them sooner than later, or actually we shouldn't have had these other team members at all because they didn't bring anything to the table or they were, misaligned with what we were doing. What do you think? They say, together each achieves more, which is team. Being an extraordinary executive, who were the essential team members that you have, and if you should have gotten them sooner or later?
So as you start your business, you have to build out your infrastructure. You have your accounting component, you have your payroll component, and in the federal government contracting world, key part is proposals, right? Because that's the lifeblood of your organization. But then you also have operations. So once you win the work, who's going to actually facilitate the work and make sure the work is getting done, deliverables are getting done? So over time, we built out our infrastructure. We brought in people once we started to make more revenue, focused on the accounting components, focused on the finance and profitability of our work, focused on human resources, focused on proposal efforts. But the big thing that we brought in was, operation expertise. Somebody that can really focus on the day-to-day operation so that myself and my business partner weren't fully involved and engrossed in the day-to-day. Because if you're focused on the day-to-day all the time, it's very difficult to kind of look beyond the day-to-day and try to be proactive. So we got those components in place. The next piece that I've learned specifically is business development, right? So my business partner, myself, really are focused on the growth and business development. We've hired people, but that's a tough position to try on the field. One, it's hitting your overhead, right? It's hitting your bottom line significantly if you get the right person. And if they're not performing, you got to get rid of them. You got to get rid of them. So, 8 to 12 months, what I've learned is the max. You should let somebody be in that position without performing. So we've taken some hits, and you're going to take hits with business developers because, it's a feast or famine, right? So that's one thing that we've learned. Right now we don't have anybody leading that effort besides myself and my business partner. So we're, in the future, we're going to hire somebody. We're still looking for a business development lead, but that's a tough position to fill. It's critical to the growth of the organization, but at the same time, it's also a drain from a financial standpoint. So you got to make sure you balance it and choose the right person.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that because some business owners that I talk about, they don't want to give up the front end of going out there and hunting, but I can definitely see how it frees up your time to be more strategic in the long-term planning and being able to go, wide and deep and create other verticals within your organization so that everybody sees, here's the potential for growth.
You're 100% right. So a lot of folks don't want to give it up. And we're not, myself and my business partner are always going to do business development, but you only have so much bandwidth, right? Yeah. So you also want to be able to tap into other markets, other agencies if you're a federal contractor. And breaking into another federal agency is very difficult because they don't know you. And in order to, for you to gain access, you might have to be a subcontractor. But, having a business developer that already has access to that particular agency cuts down a lot on, the overhead time that you're going to spend to try to break in. So it's an accelerator. And so getting the right business developer, going back to my former point or previous point, is critical. Because you say, for instance, if I want to get into USDA, I want to get into the Department of Energy, I want to get into Health and Human Services, I'm going to try to find, a business developer that has inroads into those particular agencies because that's going to help to accelerate my path to revenue. By not doing that, you're just spinning your wheels and wasting your time, right? And as a small business, you don't really have the luxury to spin your wheels. You have a constant revenue stream, and you're always looking for the next one. So
yeah, time is more valuable than the money sometimes,
Absolutely. You got to be smart when it comes to that kind of activity.
So I had a person tell me, in government contracting, they reference IT companies. They're like, hey, if I throw a rock, I can hit an IT company. With the world changing, and we just come out of, the pandemic, and some people say we might still be in it, but there's always going to be something that requires us to pivot and adjust. How have you, with the world constantly changing, whether it be government shutdowns or so-and-so, how have you guys been able to be strategic or, weather the political storms that come out here and still be able to maintain your success in the business?
That's another great question. So we've had, how many, I can't even keep count of the government shutdowns that we faced, right? And then of course, the pandemic was a significant impact to the federal space as a whole. We've been fortunate that, a lot of our work is congressionally mandated. Like I was before, we build data collection systems that collect data across the entirety of the nation, and they're congressionally mandated, which means that they have to get done. Whether pandemic or government shutdown, the work has to get done. So strategically, we position ourselves to go after work like that, because no matter what happens in the federal space, funding or no funding, the government still needs to get the work done. So we still get revenue, continuous revenue during those time periods where there's a threat of a government shutdown or a government shutdown or even a pandemic. And we've also been able to strategically pivot technologically. We position our team members so they can work remotely, no matter where they are and what position they have, except if doing on-site desktop support or something along those lines. But most of our team members can work remotely, and that was in place, and we would strategically position ourselves for that way before the pandemic hit, so folks could work from home. So when the pandemic hit, honestly, we just told people to go work from home to keep them safe. And we have not had any impact to productivity, no impact to our revenue. So we've been fortunate in that regard. And we did some pre-planning. Obviously, we didn't know but the pandemic was going to hit. But we did some pre-planning ahead of time, just in case a catastrophic event was going to occur. And we've been, pretty smooth as far as transitioning to that. And we've been there for about 2.5 years now.
I think that is a testament to what you said, being strategic, having your time freed up so you can have that long-term vision that actually put you guys in a position of being prepared for the unforeseen that, everybody
Right.
had to deal with. But the fact that you've had to change and pivot, just like business does, and some people work remotely, some people back in the office. What do you think has been the biggest challenge in, where you guys are now, not specific to the pandemic, just in business in general?
Yeah, so I think collaboration has been a hit. And then business development, you can't go to those agencies and have those face-to-face, conversations anymore. You can't walk the halls, like as they say, with your customer as frequently or at all. So we really had to pivot to a virtual environment and just kind of leveraging the virtual tools we have like Teams and Zoom to stay in contact with our customers, one, to make sure their issues and their concerns and requirements are being satisfied. And then really leveraging partnerships with existing companies that we've had to make sure that we can continue to the revenue stream. So I think the business development's been the biggest hit, and then transitioning to a virtual platform to make sure we maintain our current revenue streams, but also look to new ones as well. That's probably been the biggest challenge. But honestly, we've grown during the pandemic, which is very fortunate, and we've been blessed in that regard. A lot of folks can't say that, but we've had zero impact to our revenue, but we've actually increased our revenue during the pandemic. So and that's just based on relationships that we've had with, some large businesses, but also some small businesses to kind of position us for opportunities that are coming out. Because pandemic or not, government, still running, and work needs to be done, and work's being recompeted. So that's worked out for our benefit.
Yeah. So 13 years running the company from beginning to end, 1,000 or maybe 1,000,000 lessons learned. If you had to sit down today with your younger self at the beginning and say, hey, let me sit down and tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do, what would be your advice to your younger self?
Yeah, so one thing, patience. I had to learn things aren't going to come right away. So I would say the first one is patience. The second one is persistence. So sometimes people say those are conflicting, patience and versus persistence, but you can be patient, but you can still be persistent. You can't sit on your laurels and think, oh, well, something's going to pop up, something's going to change, something's going to come to me. You have to constantly be persistently looking for other opportunities and thinking about what's next. We have a good position right now, but you never know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? Especially with the federal government, the funding, you can't determine what the future is going to hold. So you have to make sure you have something in the pipeline to keep you going. And so we've been focused on, being patient, because things aren't going to happen right away. If something comes out, it might get canceled tomorrow, right? It might get canceled tomorrow, or it might change. You think it's going to come out a certain way and it comes out completely different, that you no longer have access to the work. The government constantly is changing. Funding is constantly changing. And you just have to recognize, okay, things are going to change. Things are going to be different. I got to be flexible and be able to pivot. But patience is key. So I would say patience, persistence, and perseverance.
The 3 Ps, huh?
The 3 Ps. And then interestingly enough, I had those 3 Ps. I had a poster made and put in my office, because my dad and I talked about this many years ago when I started my business, and I going through my experience and all the hustle that was required. But those 3 Ps is what I had in my office as a poster, because perseverance is, you're going to get beat up. You're going to be told no countless times. We had a business practice and service for the Office of Inspector Generals. I think you and I talked about this many, many years ago. And that was our focus, because that's the world I came from. And I was all excited. And I was like, we're going to kill it. We're going to make all this revenue from the Office of Inspector General. I know the business. I know the program. I know their mission. I know what services they need. And I talked to probably 10 to 12 Office of Inspector Generals. I came in with my presentation. It was very good. I had a solid slide deck, and they would all be excited. And guess how much money I made from all that? Zero. Because a lot of times those government officials didn't have the vision or didn't have the money. And I had to continue to persevere. Okay, so that didn't work. So what's next? We still got to make revenue.
Right.
To pivot, and we added some additional services that did make sense. So that goes back to, patience, persistence, perseverance. Those 3 Ps is, something that's helped me to drive as a business owner. Some days are going to be great. You're going to, be happy with, the state of your company. Other days aren't, but those 3 Ps are still going to be, important for you to kind of maintain your focus and to keep going.
What I think is interesting, and when I talk to a lot of, executives and extraordinary executives, they often tell stories of how something ancillary ended up being their main revenue generator, and they sort of stumbled across it, and they hear something similar to that. So I guess my question is, outside of more contracts or, more opportunities in the government, what do you think would be the one thing that would move the needle in your business?
So for us, you're talking about more work is always great, right? So what I've learned in the federal space, though, is they're really, you have to understand strategically where your industry and market is going. The federal government is consolidating most of their work into government-wide acquisition contracts, or GWACs. CIOS before out of NIH, Polaris out of GSA. They're all consolidating work and trying to cut down on contract administration. So for us, what I saw, say 4 or 5 years ago, is this is where the government's going. So you got to, look at the trajectory and see where your market's going. And you better get on board, because if you don't see it and you don't pay attention to that, you're going to be short, in the short run or even the long run. So we saw that was happening, and we positioned ourselves. We got CMMI certified, we got ISO certified, and we positioned our companies to make sure that we were able to go after the work. And we built upon the existing past performance we had so that we could get access to these government-wide acquisition contracts, because we knew if we're going to grow, we need to get access to the work. And that work was, getting access to the government-wide acquisition contracts. So anyway, long story short, you got to look at your market. You got to figure out where your market's going, no matter what business line you're in, and make sure you're positioned to be successful on that particular, whatever direction it's going. So that's what we've been doing. And I continue to do that on a day-to-day basis.
So what's next for you? Continued growth? Is it some type of exit strategy or what?
Right now, I'm not even thinking about exit at this point. We have my goals is we need to be 3 times our size. In order to do that, you need work, right? Like you said. And so these government-wide acquisition contracts is really our growth strategy, part of it. Have some other things in place, to help us with the business development. But, really, we need to really grow before I even consider any next steps. By where we are. So I think we're doing well. I feel blessed to be where we are. But in my mind, we have some ways to go. So ask me in 10 years.
Outstanding. So, now, hey, you're a young man right now, and someday you won't be running the business. So tell me, what would you like your legacy to be? Or better yet, what would you hope people would say about you and your partner when they, over the years of running your company?
So I think the culture of our company, people love. We've had, so every, after 10 years, you've been with the company 10 years, we give you a bonus, okay? And we've had multiple times we've given bonuses for people that have been with us for 10 plus years. And that right there says that people buy into the vision, they buy into the culture. So at the end of the day, I want people to say that, I work for and work with somebody that really valued me and really provided me the opportunities for me to grow professionally and personally. And so at the end of the day, if I can achieve that, I think I'll be, satisfied with, what I did at Sanametrix and beyond. So that's kind of the legacy that I would like to leave from a corporate standpoint, that people would feel comfortable and confident saying that.
Wow. Well, here's the thing. I guess one last piece of advice that you would give to, anybody listening to this, who's striving to be an extraordinary executive like yourself. And maybe it might not have been a question that I asked or anything like that, but just something that comes to mind.
I think what comes to mind as far as being extraordinary, I would say, kind of going back to the 3 Ps, honestly, I use that as a guide for making decisions. Patience, persistence, and perseverance. And I use that as kind of like my guide to help with build a culture for the organization, but also as a driver for me. personally, not just, professionally, but also personally as well. I think those three P's helped me to kind of achieve some of those things. I don't know if I would say extraordinary. I think I would definitely say it kind of yields some level of success across the field in my life. So, I think those three P's would probably be the piece of advice that I would transfer on to somebody else. And then there's multiple translations for what each one of those things, three P's means. But, I think at the top level, I think that, somebody could execute those, they'd be pretty successful and hopefully extraordinary in their eyes.
Outstanding. Well, thanks so much. Once again, we've been talking with Warner Roberts, the co-founder of Sanametrix Incorporated. He's an extraordinary executive who not only makes a profit in his company, cares for his people, uses the three P's on a business and a personal level, but really makes an impact in the things that he provides in his community, as well as for his employees in the workforce. They say, if you win in the workplace, you can also win in the marketplace. Join us next week, and we'll be talking to another extraordinary executive. I'm Randy Jones, and I'll talk to you soon.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Pass, Guardian, or Financial Growth Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Randy is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, Pass, OSJ 11350, McCormick Road, Suite 202, Hunt Valley, Maryland 21031, 410-828-540. Securities, products, and advisory services offered by Pass, member, FINRA, SIPC, financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Pass is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Financial Growth Partners is the DBA name of IAPA LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary. Guardian 2022-142821, expiration 824.